Sounds good. Yeah, let's do it.
Beautiful. Cameron, England. How is it going, brother? I guess
Going good.
before we I guess before we dive into anything, perhaps it would be useful, it would be prudent for you to just give a little brief introduction as to who you are, what you do with your business, who you serve, and obviously what your current monthly recurring revenue is.
Mhm. Yeah, so my name's Cameron England. Started in the agency space, say November of around 2022 or so. So I've been in there for around a year and 4 months, something along those lines. From that point, started cold calling, putting in the reps, dropped out of high school at the time when I was 16. And then fast forward to now, 18, we've got an agency that had a top line month of around $95,000. And at present, we're doing about 50 to 60K in recurring cash flow, not taking into consideration new cash.
Beautiful, bro. I'm very excited to dive into your story because I know that, out of a lot of the clients that we've had on board, you're one of those people that has worked incessantly to be able to get the level of progress that you've managed to reach. Also, again, the fact that you're so young is very impressive. But let's take this all the way back. Let's take this back to November of 2022. Um, Initially, what put you on the path of wanting to get into digital marketing?
I think it was honestly initially came down to always feeling like I was below other people, like not even just financially, but personally as well. Just that obsession with self improvement and wanting to get better with myself, and then it just gets more and more addicting, and you want to make more and more money. But that's a different story in itself, right? But I feel like the biggest thing for me was just wanting an out of a 9 to 5. I was always labeled as like bossy, and I wanted to kind of like lead the show in a sense. And I don't think I would have been able to do that going down the traditional route. And then you see Andrew Tate and you see all these gurus, and then that's what kind of planted the seed in my mind to start looking into stuff like this.
Okay, interesting. So at that point in time, you said that you were still in high school, still in sixth form, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
What was the plan at that point in time before you'd dived into digital marketing? Had you run any other businesses before this? Had you tried drop shipping, anything like that?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I got an apprenticeship when I was coming out of secondary school. Turned it down because I just didn't want to do it. So that was the plan initially. The whole family thought I was set. I was going to make 40K after like 5 years. It would have been safe. Um, and I didn't really want to do it. So I went to college, went there 3 days a week. The first business I had was actually in secondary school, if you want to class it as a business, which was selling vapes in the toilets and in my local area. Um, yeah. So that actually did pretty well. We had like 50% profit margin per vape, and I'd sell a lot of them.
Mhm.
But of course, that isn't sustainable. And then I actually went in Andrew Tate Tufts University, started
Okay.
learning about copywriting and things like that. And I think that was a turning point for me because not necessarily the skills I learned, but more so the fact that it was like a slap in the face to say this shit's a lot harder than it's made out to me. I think uninformed optimism is what you have when you initially start, right? You think everything's going to be a lot easier than it is. You sign some clients on a 2K retainer, but that made me realize that's not the case. And I think that was the best thing that could have happened.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So first and foremost, this entrepreneurial spirit has always been within you. You've always wanted to kind of walk your own path. But then the fact
Mm-hmm.
that obviously you dived into, I believe, the real world, and were able to probably get a little bit of exposure to the possibilities out there. Okay, so that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So that takes us a little bit further down the line. When was it that you discovered Charlie? Was that a little bit later? Was that earlier? How did that come to pass?
Um, I think it was around maybe early 2023. I think maybe summertime, actually, around March, April time. Funny enough, my first point of contact with Charlie is I was watching a lot of his videos. And then initially it was with that sales thing where I was initially offered to come on the team and be a sales rep, right? And at
Yeah.
the time I was like, do I do it? Do I not? And I stuck to what my gut was telling me. And I was like, no, you just got to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember this because I was in Turkey at the time. This is when I was living the digital nomad lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
Charlie was like, I've got this guy who I feel like might be good for the sales team. And we had a pretty long conversation. And I could tell myself, I was like, I'm not sure I'm not sure he's going to be the best fit for the team, because it seems like he really wants to do his own thing. So even
Yeah.
at that stage, because you were posting a lot of videos on YouTube, you were, even from the jump, like you were really trying to establish a personal brand. Like you're very similar to Iman in the sense that pretty much your whole story is out there from day one. How did you find those initial stages when you were trying to figure out positioning in the market, how to structure your offer, how to actually conduct the cold calls? How was that at the beginning?
It was kind of like being in a maze with a blindfold on. It's like you're taking the next step with hopes that you're going to land on the right step and you're not going to fall back down again. You have really no sense of direction, no sense of, well, what the hell am I going to do to get to the next level? Because you hear about these things and signing retainers and scaling up and hitting 100K, and it gets so glorified. But getting there is a different story, because there's so much work that goes into it in the day to day, and it just compounds those small micro actions. And it was just figuring it out each day, messing up, figuring things out, and just pushing forward. But certainly took a lot. I would say when it started, it took a lot longer than I anticipated. Again, I started with that uninformed optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And then the popcorn effect really started to take off, say, summertime, when all of a sudden I feel like, as a result of all the work I put in at the start of the year on the rear end of 2022,
Mm-hmm.
as a lagging indicator, things started performing, the business started growing, and that's when I guess things started picking up. But at the start, yeah, it was tough. I didn't really know anything, so I was just figuring it out, you know?
Okay, so at that stage, was it literally trial and error? You would,
Yeah.
wow, that's insane. And it's very interesting that you went through that pathway, because you didn't even look for help. I think as you said, it was, we came to you, which is very unusual. I think you're probably one of the only people that we have reached out to on that side of things. Okay, beautiful. So when that initial conversation happened, Charlie reached out to you. I remember him telling me he liked you because you just seemed very confident on the sales calls, right? Not on the sales calls, on the cold calls that you were taking.
Yeah.
At that stage, had you managed to sign on some clients as of yet?
I think I had a couple here and there. Initially, I think it was my first 5 clients I signed through cold calls, cold outbound DMs on Instagram, Facebook. But I was labeling them as closes, but it was really just me being a glorified freelancer doing absolutely everything and just getting paid a commission of everybody that I booked in. So it was like £50 per appointment that I was booking in. And I had
Mm,
like 5 of them, and it was good, but it was hard because then I was trying to market the business, sell, take sales calls, build a good product, hire a team. And at the same time, I was calling my clients' leads like 12 hours a day.
mm.
So it was all compounded into one thing. And I wouldn't label it as me having proper clients. I'd say I was a glorified freelancer getting paid a decent amount a month for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And at that stage, do you remember how many hours you were putting into actually doing the work on a daily basis when you were in that glorified freelancer stage?
It must have been, I don't remember a day where I haven't worked for the last like year and a half. There's not really been a day where I've took a day off. And it's not out of like, it's not because I don't want to. It's just, I just enjoy what I do, you know? So I just want to work in it. But then it was probably like 16 hours, something like that.
Jesus Christ. Okay, cool. Well, I guess that kind of brings us to the point where you dive into the product.
Mhm.
I think you must have probably jumped into the product around March. So it would have been a year ago, around this time a year ago. What
Yeah.
what were your initial thoughts on the product? How did it help with all of these problems that you were facing, those 16-hour days that you were doing at the time? How did it help you to streamline things?
I would say the biggest thing was going through the self transcendence portion, which I actually went back to in January because I didn't get a chance to finish it all because there's just so much to go through. It's absolutely insane. And I went back to it, and again, it just got better the second time that I went through it because I know everybody talks about the strategy, but I truly think that a lot of the strategy is already out there.
Mm.
it's what you do with that information, and if you're willing to go through what it takes to get the outcome that you want. Like in order to get what you want, you have to deserve what you want, right? I think a big piece of that is like the self transcend as it's labeled, becoming somebody worthy of the business that you want to own, of the body that you want to have. Going through that was a game changer, and it kind of confused me a lot, but it was that's what was the turning point for me, going through that.
Okay. And when you say that it was the turning point for you, what kind of shift started happening for you in terms of your paradigms, in terms of your limiting beliefs?
One big thing was just realizing that goals are there, not necessarily goals should be hygiene standards. And that was a big shift for me. Rather than setting these goals of 100K a month and things like that, it's not 100K a month is the eventual goal in maybe 5 years. It's 100K a month is the hygiene standard. If I am not making $100,000 a month coming into my bank, I feel disgusted. Just something so simple like that, and going through the oscillations of the life cycles and building out what my life needs to look like in order to become somebody deserving of a business that makes that amount of money, and reading it every single morning. Because I was one of those that got so tied up in, like, yeah, the 16-hour days. It's like getting on a boat with no sense of direction. Like, you just get so tied up in all the chaos and the bullshit and the to-dos and the Slack notifications. But I was never zooming out and looking, okay, this is the big picture. This is where we need to steer the ship. This is where we're aiming towards, right? And I think that was a big game changer. Setting hygiene standards, having a clear-cut understanding as to where the ship was headed and how to get it there.
Okay. So at that point, you feel like you've got a little bit more direction. And it's conceptually a lot easier for you to understand how you are actually going to become the person that you are now, right? Beyond that point, what were the things that you gained from the product that really helped you to simplify the chaos that was going on at that point in time, like the 16-hour days? How did you slowly start transitioning away from that and getting back into the position where you're working on the business instead of necessarily in it?
Mm-hmm. Realizing that I didn't need to do everything, and going through the hiring portion was a big part as well. I was always, so initially I didn't really know how to hire, of course, because I'd never done it before. So I'd pay somebody like 1K each time I wanted to hire a Filipino VA to place them. And then I'd be paying them like a 20% commission or like a 20% additional fee month to month.
Mm.
And I did that for like the first 6 people that I hired, and it was a mess.
Oh my God, Cameron.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of stupid. Until I realized how easy it really was.
Mm.
If you have the right qualification forms in place, if you're running the right ads, if you're on the right job platforms, things like that. And just looking at every single task through a lens of, is this something that I can automate, delegate, eliminate? Is this worth my cost per hour? Like really zooming out and going, okay, if the business is making 20K right now, I'm working 10 hours a day. That means my time's worth, for example, $200 an hour. Is updating a client's ad worth $200 an hour? Or can I get somebody for $5 an hour to refresh that creative? And just delegating those pieces and focusing on the only two things that actually move the money needle, which is mainly sales and marketing. And then everything else can mostly be delegated, besides, of course, monitoring, working on building a strong team culture, building a solid team. So yeah, that was the biggest thing that got me to go from working on in the business, feeling like I needed to keep tight to my money the whole time and not hire anybody and keep margins as big as possible, to then working on it, delegating, automating, and eliminating everything.
Okay, so
As much as possible.
You basically did a complete 180. You probably got to that point, right, where because you'd been putting in so much time doing 16 hours that you were so sick of it that it was a case of like, I need to get this off my hands as quickly as possible. Okay, that's interesting. In terms of like the community, in terms of using the support mechanisms, were you super active with that? Or was it more just a case of you had your head down, you were happy cracking on by yourself, you knew what you needed to do at this stage because you had a step-by-step process?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really use this community and support too much, but every time I have, it's been helpful. Like I looked in the classroom the other day because I haven't really been on many of the calls. I was like, holy shit, why is there so many calls?
Yeah,
I
that's a lot now. It's
was
grown.
like, okay, fair. So now every time I jump in the school, at least I know I can jump in a call. Like one of them was extra helpful was the performance coaching. So I jumped on that a couple of times with Billy.
Mhm,
That was good in terms of optimizing health. For me, it was never a case of I didn't know what to do.
mhm,
I think it was just a case of just doing it
mhm.
without pain avoidance. Because I made the mistake before with other coaching programs and other systems that I've put in place, like putting so much time into like information overload, even though I already knew what I needed to do. So I just wanted to put my head down and focus on the thing that I needed to do, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. Another thing that I kind of want to touch on is obviously we did a mastermind back in October, and you came through to that with a couple of the other guys. What was that experience like being at a mastermind? Was that your first mastermind that you'd been to? Have you
It
been to?
was,
Okay.
yeah, that was incredible. I'll be honest, that was really good.
And what would you
Really
say?
fucking good.
What would you say were the key takeaways that you got from that 3 day event?
Because like I've considered going to masterminds. Funny enough, I've been to like two or three others now, purely because I just loved it so much. I just wanted to be in rooms like that again and again and again. It's going to sound cliche, but again, the connections, the networking, being around people that sit next to you and are just like, yeah, I just make like 500K. It's just 500K a month. It's just nothing. Like it completely breaks your mental barrier. Like you see somebody on Zoom, it's a little bit different. In a group setting,
Mm,
you see they're sat next to you on a table and you realize this guy's just normal. Right? It's just a
mhm,
normal geezer. You know, that's what really shifted my mind. And at the same time, like again, all of the mindset stuff we went over, all of the strategy, the connections. I still speak to a handful of the people that I met at that event on a week to week basis. We meet up every now and again. So just those connections, like lifelong friends that will come from events like that, is incredible too.
And this is one thing that I've said this so many times in client interviews, but one thing that I think is so understated about just getting in a product of some sort, especially when you've got quality people in there, it is that network effect. It is
Mm-hmm.
that hygiene standard just immediately gets raised because you're surrounded by a different caliber of people, and it changes your perspective on what is normal and what you can accomplish. So that's fantastic. Okay, well, Cameron, I guess to push this more towards the direction of people who might be sitting on the fence. Um, for somebody who's watching this interview, watching some of the other client interviews, maybe has jumped on a call with me, jumped on a call with some of the other guys, and they're not sure whether or not this is actually going to help them. What is it that you would say to someone who's in that position at the moment?
I've been in that position, and the scariest thing to be in, the scariest position to be in, is in that paralysis period where you do I do it, do I not? Honestly, worst case scenario, you spend some money and maybe you don't like it. But the way I see it is you either pay with time or you pay with money. Like, regardless of if you need things right now. Like, honestly, when I came into the program, I didn't need anything. It wasn't a need. However, I knew damn right it would elevate or accelerate my progression because I would be around other people. I would make connections because you are who you surround yourself with as well. And
Mhm.
if you don't have that caliber of person in your environment on the day to day, which I don't because I'm in the middle of nowhere, you need that.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing for me, just the community, the coaching. Like I would be happy to pay for a program just for the networking piece alone because I know that it will make me more money as a byproduct of me just being around better people.
Beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you on that front. Okay, last two questions then. First one, Cameron, what is the goal, brother? What is the goal for 2024? Where do you want to take the business? What are you looking to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the goal for 2024 in the business is 1.6 million revenue, sub 8% churn. That's the goal top line revenue.
Mhm.
We want 250 active clients under management, 35% margin. And then eventually in the next 12 to 36 months, sell, cash out for like a 3 to 4x multiple, and then I don't know, figure things out from there. But that's the goal that I'm focused on right now.
Okay, beautiful. Last thing, Cameron, is there anything that you want to share? I think, to be honest with you, especially given your age, and you've seen this, I've seen this myself, especially because of people like Andrew Tate, we've got people like Charlie. There's a ton of very influential guys out there right now who are really speaking to your generation and really showing them a different path that they can walk. You being that guy, right? 18 years old, making 100K on a monthly basis, what is it that you would say to, some of the peers that you might have at school who are thinking about the fact that they're going to be stuck in a 9 to 5 X, Y, and Z? What is something that you can share with them to kind of push them in a better direction?
Just zoom out. I know it sounds cliche, but just zoom out and think like, do you? And you've probably heard it before, but do you really want to die? Like, you don't live for long. Like, you live a very, very short period of time. Nothing really matters. Nonetheless, I just think it's important to do something that's true to you, because otherwise, you're going to die and you're going to be pretty depressed for the whole of your life. For me, anyway. Again, I know some people are different, but I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to live as somebody else internally as I acted externally. Like, they've got to be in sync with one another. If you feel internally that a 9 to 5 isn't for you, and you want to become a leader and you want to do good, cool shit and live a good life and have a mission and a purpose, then if you don't express that externally, you're always going to be out of sync and you're never going to have peace of mind.
And I think a lot of people know that, but how do they overcome that fear of actually taking the steps, having the confidence to become that person?
I think the confidence comes as a byproduct of taking the leap, even though you don't know where it's going to get you. I don't think you just build the confidence out the gate, because I'm still building it now, and it all comes with micro action on a macro scale, compounds, and those actions then have people label you over a period of time as confident or disciplined.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And this is something that I say to a lot of people in the sales calls. When someone jumps on the call and they're similarly to your age and they say, look, I want to get to 10K, 20K, 30K, whatever it might be. And then they're fearful to take that step forwards. As best as I can, I try to explain them that threshold of overcoming the fear is integral to the process of getting to your goal. And if you can't do it, you're not going to make it. But anyway, Cameron, brother, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time. I'm excited to see what you do with the rest of this year. And yeah, brother, I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, appreciate it.